Hey guys, Omerko here, self-taught web developer, and today I will show you how could you easily fetch the data from some API and also how could you send the post requests. We will do all of that with just one method called fetch. And fetch API, we will do it through JavaScript, as it is not a JavaScript method, it is the browser method, but as we are running the JavaScript on a browser, we could run that method in a JavaScript. So let's go into code and explore that part. Okay, so here we are at the fetch API. So fetch method in JavaScript does not come in a JavaScript, but it is coming from a browser method. Basically, as the JavaScript is run on a browser, it could run a fetch method, and by that we could get data or do some post requests, put requests, and more. More about the fetch API, fetch method, you could read here at developer Mozilla, and here there is a fetch API and everything regarding that, right? So you could see requests, responses, and here you could see that fetch method is returning promise, so you could bind to it then and catch blocks, and also it is asynchronous. So here you see that fetch also won't reject HTTP error status. So if there is a, so for example, if there is a 404 issue, like that you are trying to find some user, for example, in a database, but there is no that user, so it will give you the error back, but it won't stop the request. The request will be still passed and you will get the empty data back. So this is just something to think about, as you must set your conditions in that fetch then block. Basically, you must set like if else condition and at that point. So yeah, you could go to this URL, and I will post this URL down in this video description so you can easily go to it. Also, for this video, we will use some request response API. So here you could see the URL and what will we have with this. So basically, this is the open source REST API, which we could bind to it like a get, post, and put, delete methods, right? And by that we could test our app basically. So if you are working on your own projects or some test data, or even try to learn something new, you could go to this website, and here you could use some of these methods, right? So we will use today a list of users. So we will get the list of users with fetch method from JavaScript. So now that you know what we will do today, let's now jump into code. Okay, so here I have my Visual Studio Code on the left side and my browser on the right side. As you could see, I just have index.html and app.js files. I imported the app.js in my index, so we will see what we are getting through JS here in the console. So to use fetch method, we could just basically use it like a fetch, and you could see that there is already the method. So we will use this one, and there is two things but that we could pass. But first one, we could pass this like a string of the REST API that we wish to hit to get the data. So I will go back to request response here, and here you could see that there is the list of users. This is basically the request. If we scroll down a bit, you could see that is hosted on Heroku, and this is the URL. And here you have these examples of JavaScript, jQuery, and a bit more. So I will just copy this part here, right, and put it in my a string here to fetch from that URL. So now I will go back to document, and here, as you remember, I told you that this is the promise, so we could bind then block to it. So I will use the then method, and what we will get from this request is basically response, and I will just console log this response, console.log response. So let's see what we are getting. As you could see on the right side, if I open up this response, we have this URL that we just sent, where we just get the data from. the status is 200, and so it is OK, successful, right? And OK set to true. But as you could see, there is no data. There is somebody here, right? And if we open up, there is no data currently. Why? Well, fetch is getting the JSON data back, and also this REST API is working with the JSON data. So we will use a method on our response to get the JSON back instead of just this response back. So I will delete this console log, and I will use this response and use the method JSON on it. Right, and this method JSON will give us back again that block. So I will use then again, and at that point I will get JSON data. So I will get my usual normal data, and I will console log that. So here you could see the data, and this data, if I open up, there is a bit regarding the pages that is just a request response that is sending back to us, but here is the data of our users. As you see, we are hitting the API to get the users. So we have a couple of users here, right? At the beginning of this, you saw that we could also use fetch to make a post request, not just get request at this point. So how could we do that? As you saw, we could pass two parameters into the fetch method. One is the URL that we are trying to fetch, and the second one will be the object, and in this object will go everything regarding optional data regarding this fetch method. So one of those data is called methods. So as you could see, the method, and we will set method to be post method. So the next part, we must send also headers. Why headers? Well, we must tell the API that we are sending the JSON data to them, basically. So we will set headers to be content type, set to be application / JSON. So now API knows that it should get the JSON data through this header. As you could see, I saved my file, and it immediately sent the post request to this URL, and that generated ID for us, and also the timestamp for us. And the one thing that we should, well, it's important to send through the post request is body. It won't work with it, right? So we will set the body, and the body we will set it, for example, to be first name of the user, as we are saving the users. I will set to be Omerko. So when I save this, I will get this issue, right? First of all, this basically the fetch is sending this data as this data, like this, like the object, and we shouldn't do it like that. We must send the JSON data, right? So I will use here JSON that stringify, and as it is the method, I will just put brackets around my data here. And when I save the file, you could see that now we are sending the data like the first name Omerko, ID that we are getting, well, that API is creating for us, and timestamp. Also there is, we could say like last name. Yeah, so if I do this, yes, everything should work fine, right? Okay, so this was all for this video. As you could see, the fetch API is not hard at all to use, and this was just a quick video to show you how could you easily use it and make your requests starting today, right? In the description of this video you will find all the URLs from this video, and if you liked this video, please make sure to click like and subscribe, as there will be much more videos in the future. Thank you, and see you in the next one.